Morning, guys. Welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning. Lovely to see so many faces. Welcome. Sorrel, I can hear your background.
I'll just mute myself for you.
Welcome, guys, to the Danira Food channel this morning. Morning, Jen. So everyone is muted. The problem is if we're all talking, then we all can't hear. So feel free to ask any questions throughout the morning. Down the bottom of your screen is a little chat button. You can type in a message and I will go through those during the morning. So you know that you can run your video, and if you don't want me to see you, you can stop your video, but you can still see me and hear me. We're going to wait for a few more people to join us this morning. We have over 80 people joining us, which will be fun. Gee, we're going to be busy this morning. So you've got time if you want to grab a coffee, grab a cup of tea. If you're not familiar with Zoom, I have been pinned onto your screen and you can have a look around at other people that are with us. You can have a practice and just send a chat. A few people have sent some chats. Let's have a look. Excited, says Jenny Khan. Hello from Connecticut. Hey, PJ Hans. That's exciting. Hi, Naomi. Little shout out to Rebecca Balkan, has set up Sweet Chick in Surrey Hills. You need to check her out. We were there yesterday. She makes the best honey jumbles in town. Go on to the Sweet Chick and check out Rebecca. So we're going to wait a couple of more minutes to fill our room this morning or this evening if you're in Connecticut. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Danira and a little bit about myself. Danira project sort of came out of isolation where Danny Grimberg was looking for online resources for his parents and for family during isolation, and so he pulled together a team of dedicated volunteers, including myself. Lisa Goldberg and I have set up the food channel, and we, with a whole range of talented people, have provided an online platform in music and theatre and food and religion and spirituality and so many wonderful resources. There's live talks, there's podcasts, there's on demand where you can see wonderful movies, and you really, if you have time after this, just to go on to danira.org.au and to check out, there's wonderful things happening 24/7. So a little bit about me. For those that you don't know me, I'm Melissa Don Port. I have over 40 years background in food. I was raised in a family with an incredible mum who was an incredible cook, and generations before her, everything still to this day revolves around food. And so I sort of went into the food industry. After I studied food, I became a food stylist. I used to style for cookbooks and TV commercials. I also lectured at college for many years. And then I started having a family. So I started a cooking school from home. So I know I've had hundreds of students over the years. So welcome to you who are here this morning with us. Hi, June. what was the name of the cafe, please? It was The Sweet Chick in Surrey Hills, Hutchinson Street, Surrey Hills, kosher biscuits and cakes. So my cooking school was named Mia Cucina. At the time I was living in a beautiful little Italian villa in the middle of Rose Bay. That's where the name came from. And over the years, I've done a lot of volunteer charity work, large corporate events, had my cooking school, juggled kids, and now I run food tours. So my passion is street food, and my food tours are not only throughout Australia, but all around the world. It's really, some people do churches, I do markets and street food. So this workshop today is really all about sharing my knowledge, my family heirloom recipes, and updating them really to the 21st century. I'm just looking here, and just to remind you that you are muted, so you can't speak to me, but you can chat to me. On the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little chat button, and you can type your hearts away. We have, if we missed the demo on Zoom, yes, Renee, it is being recorded, and you will be able to watch that anytime on demand on catch up on the Dunera website, and that is dunera.org.au. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start, and as people join us, you will be able to catch up later on. So the first thing with pickling, with preserving, and this is probably the most important thing, is everything needs to be sterilised. Everything that you use needs to be super, super clean. So either you wash your jar, your cutlery in very hot soapy water, put it in the oven and get it to a very hot temperature, then let it cool, or modern day, the equivalent is in the dishwasher. Make sure everything is super clean, super dry before you start to use anything. The thing with homemade pickling and preserving, unlike what you buy in the supermarket, you can put a dirty knife into your jam and it will never go moldy, because there's so much preservative in the jars that nothing ever grows. But that doesn't happen with homemade preserves. So if you've ever wondered why your homemade jam's gone off, that's why. So you've got to teach your kids, you've got to stick labels all over, no fingers, no hands, always clean utensils. We are going to look at a couple of different recipes. I'm going to show you pickled cucumbers. I've had some requests for the Vietnamese pickles, which you often find decorating salads, and I'm going to show you that recipe. And really, any questions, we can talk about really anything at all. Okay, the first thing with the jars, it's really good to be mindful and resourceful using old jars. So whether you've bought a jar of olives or whether you've bought anything glass, is really, you shouldn't be throwing it out. You should be storing them and reusing them, recycling them. You know, I'm always giving away food, and placing things in jars rather than plastic containers is so much better. So the first thing we want to do is to make the brine. Now, I have seen some comments, people were already looking at the recipe, and to let you know, the recipe will be available on the Dunera website, and the recipes, all of the recipes I'm talking about today, are also on my website, miacucina.com.au. That's MIACUCINA, Mia Cucina, mykitchen.com.au. So the jar we have, now the cucumbers. The cucumbers, I traditionally like to use gherkins. Gherkins are the very little cucumbers, and they're very prickly on the outside of the skin. and unfortunately they're not in season, and even when they are in season they're hard to find. So the places you will find them are the independent small greengrocers on the strip shopping. So they're normally European, they're Greek, Italian, the Asian community. They will sell the gherkins, the fresh gherkins. Unfortunately, I ran around and they were nowhere. So we're going to use Lebanese cucumbers. They're the next best thing. And these are your standard normal Lebanese cucumbers. So the first little secret, which not many people know about, and what I love when I'm cooking and wanting to update my knowledge, is research. What I researched recently was soaking your cucumbers overnight in water makes them much crunchier, your pickled cucumber. So that's a good little point, which I recently found. So I keep the tops on. When I hand pick my cucumbers, I like to make sure they're fairly straight. Sometimes you see people standing over the cucumber bar. That's people like me. I like to place my jar on an angle and place the cucumbers into the jar. I find when you're standing it up, they fall around, okay? This way, when the jar is lying down, I can absolutely shape it to how I want the cucumbers to go in. Packing your cucumbers is really very, very important into the jar. They've got to be very tight. Unfortunately, these cucumbers are quite large. You might need a skinny one, a thick one. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to show you. It looks quite full, my jar. It sort of looks quite full there. What I am going to show you is I'm going to squeeze a skinny one and squeeze it right into the jar. What happens is, as you're preserving the cucumbers, they shrink up. And once the cucumbers, as they're being pickled, they shrink, and then they all sort of start rising out of your jar. So what you want to make sure is you're squeezing as much as you can into the jar. To that, we're going to add our spices. You don't have to add ginger if you don't want, garlic. You don't have to add garlic if you don't want garlic. With the garlic, you just cut the top off with the base of the knife. If you listen, you crunch it down. This is a huge clove of garlic. And what I am going to do is cut it in half and place that in the jar. I was too busy talking and I didn't put my dill in. The dill goes in, fresh dill. The dill's been washed under cold water. Put some more garlic in, and then the spices. You can buy pickling spice or you can make your own. We've got bay leaves, chilies. I love a bit of chili. I love a lot of chili. If you don't like chili, you don't need to put chili in. Mustard seeds, peppercorns. Those seeds are in. The chili's in. Now for the brine. Now, traditionally with a brine, you dissolve salt in boiling water. You let that dissolve, and a lot of recipes say pour that boiling brine over the cucumber, and I disagree. So you can try this out for yourself, but I find pouring a hot brine over cucumbers actually starts to cook them. I prefer to cool the brine down overnight and then pour that over the cucumbers. So my recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of rock salt. You can use kosher salt. I buy my rock salt in bulk, and I find that it's cheaper, better value. I put 2 tablespoons of rock salt, and I've done this morning already, into boiling water. I've stirred that until the salt has dissolved. So it's 2 tablespoons of rock salt. You can use kosher salt. You don't use table salt. Table salt are those big containers. They make your water cloudy. Look how lovely and clear this water is. That is rock salt, just in boiling water. Remember, always use boiling water. You don't use hot water from the tap. Whatever water you do use, it has to be from the kettle, boiling water. So once I have dissolved my 2 tablespoons into 1 cup of hot water, I then have the other remaining 2 cups of water. So I do 3 cups of boiling water, that's in the recipe, and some vinegar. Someone said that they don't like to use vinegar. You don't have to use vinegar. You can use red wine vinegar. You can put some apple cider vinegar. You can use any vinegar. I don't add sugar, but I know that my kids wanted my next batch a little bit sweeter. I don't cook with sugar, so I'm actually going to add a little bit of coconut sugar. And I'm going to experiment with that. In my recipe, it calls for 1/4 cup of sugar. So the lovely thing about that coconut sugar, it really dissolves straight away. That's going into the other boiling water, which has cooled down. And then to that, I'm going to add my vinegar. 1/4 cup of vinegar. Now this is the thing, is you really need to taste your mixture to make sure that it's strong. It needs to be strong. If it's quite weak, it won't penetrate into your cucumbers. That's delicious, delicious. So this is already now being cooled. The kettle I boiled a few hours ago, so all the water here is boiled. And then we pour that, remember it's cooled, over your cucumbers. Right to the top, cover the top. Okay, so now this sits in a cool, dry place for a couple of days. You don't put this in the fridge, otherwise it won't preserve. The thing about putting food into the fridge, if you put an avocado that is not ripe, that is still firm, and put it in the fridge, it stops its growing process. It stops its aging process, so it won't continue to ripen in the fridge. So the same with anything pickled. You need to leave this out in the open. I just put the lid on the side so nothing falls into it, but the air can come in and out. I leave that for 2 or 3 days in a cool, dry place. So you don't leave that in the fridge. You don't leave it near the stove. You just move it to a cool, dry place. You can put it under the cupboard. And you know, this recipe is centuries old. I want to bring in my mum, who's sitting in the chat room this morning, to talk about her memories of her grandfather that she recalls. Are you there, Rayleigh? Rayleigh, if you can unmute yourself. I've unmuted you. Good morning. No, she can't hear us. So I will share the story. My great-grandparents came out of Russia. There we are. Morning.
Morning. How is everybody today? Lovely day.
Everyone's well. So tell me what you remember, what your mum told you about your grandparents coming out of Russia.
Well, they went to Brisbane and they lived in Deshan Street in the Gabba. And as a child, I used to go up and visit, and they lived in this 2-story house, like all the old Brisbane homes. And underneath is where they did all their pickling and keeping all their alcohol that my grandfather had made. And I can always remember these great big vats of cucumbers for pickling. And my grandfather always used to put the crust from the bread on the top to stop insects and animals getting into it. I don't know why or how, but we lived on pickled cucumbers and all the beautiful things they used to make.
Fascinating. Beautiful. And under the house, I suppose, because in Brisbane, that was the coolest place.
That's right. I mean, pickled tomatoes and all those in big crock pots.
Amazing. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. So, you know, it's centuries of tradition when we are pickling, and it came out of Europe, and it still is there today, where during the summer months, it only may have been 3 months when they were growing gherkins and the tomatoes, and for the next 9 months, it was frozen over. So you had to really, when you had the 3 months opportunity, was to take all of your crops, and what do you do with them? You eat them fresh for 3 months, but then you pickle them, and that's where pickled tomatoes and cucumbers and preserving in salt and otherwise freezing in ice. But that's really where these ancient traditions have come into play. And now it's very much the fashion. Everyone's into fermentation, and everyone talks about, you know, everyone's running fermentation classes. I think, oh, we've been doing this for centuries. Really? That's what's been happening. Okay, we've got a message here from June. If using finer salt, you wouldn't use a tablespoon if you're using finer salt, June. You would cut it down to start with 2 or 3 teaspoons and then taste it and add it. Remember, you can always add, but it's very hard to subtract. Denise says hello from Vancouver. Hi, Denise. Welcome. Just to let everyone know that this is being recorded, so you can catch up afterwards on the denera.org.au website. So you can replay and rewatch that. Have you made this recipe with your own family? Are your kids a fan of it? Absolutely. Kids, it's a great thing to be cooking with kids, and it's, you know, you can't really make a mistake, just so long as you're sterilising along the way is important. Anna Stone, hi Anna. Love pickled cucumbers. Love pickled, oh yes. Yeah, it's very hard to buy the very tiny small cucumbers. They're very much European breed of cucumber. What I do want to talk about now is the Vietnamese pickle, the daikon and the carrot. And that is by request. Someone wrote to me earlier during the week wanting to know. So the carrot and the daikon, this is the white radish, what I'm talking about. It was twice as long. Peel it, cut it up into strips. You can make it, you can grate it, make it finer. I like them sort of like sticks. They go into a sterilised jar, and pretty much like any other preserving recipe, you make sure everything is sterilised. This recipe is a lot sweeter. This recipe, like a lot of Asian cooking, is much sweeter. If you've been Vietnamese cuisine, a lot of these pickled vegetables are served on top of salad leaves. I find it's a lovely thing to nosh on. I'm not into sugar, so I will always replace sugar with either maple syrup, or I replace it with honey or coconut sugar. And again, you want to cram pack this in. It really, traditionally, there are no spices in here. There are no herbs. It's just the cut up vegetables. And they do shrink over time. Now, there is a traditional recipe for this where you actually have to massage the salt and the sugar into the vegetable, but who can be bothered? I do this all the time, and it is absolutely beautiful. If you want to go traditional, you can sit there and massage. You want to cram pack as much of the vegetable inside here as possible. Because these are cut up vegetables, they don't take as long to pickle. So I would leave them out of the fridge for the day, and then I would put them straight into the fridge. Okay, that's really cram tight. And this recipe has a cup of boiling water with a teaspoon of salt, a quarter of a cup of sugar, and half a cup of rice vinegar. Rice vinegar you can buy in any Asian supermarkets. I mean, Coles and Woolies and all the main chains sell this vinegar. Place the vinegar. Remember, the water has been boiled. The salt, the sugar, I have used caster sugar. So the difference between caster sugar and white sugar, caster sugar is finer, so it will dissolve quicker. Yes, I'm measuring a quarter of a cup of rice vinegar. And we're going to give this a taste. Very sweet when you're not a sugar girl. Cover the vegetables again. And that's it. So I would sit this just out of the fridge for the day, and then I would put the lid on it and put it into the fridge. So what I wanted to say about the cucumbers, after the cucumbers start pickling, sitting out of the fridge for a couple of days, you may see them starting to float in the jar, which means that they are shrinking and there's more room around. So what you can do is take a slice of cucumber and push it in there. You can put a slice of onion and push it in there and make it compact and tight, and you'll push the cucumbers to the bottom of the jar again. Or quite often I will just take a quarter of a carrot and push it into the jar. Using an onion, you will change the flavour of the brine. I don't mind the onion flavour. If you don't want the onion flavour, a wedge of carrot pushed into the jar with the cucumbers will move all the cucumbers under the brine again, and you'll have a pickled carrot at the end. Okay, so just to recap on a couple of the most important points when we're pickling the cucumbers. One, make sure everything is sterilised. That includes the jar or your utensils or your equipment. Two, soak your cucumbers the night before in cold water. They can be out of the fridge, doesn't need to be in the fridge. Soaking your cucumbers overnight makes them a much crunchier cucumber. Placing everything super tight into the jar, really, really tight. When you saw my cucumbers were tight in the jar, I got a skinny cucumber and pushed that in to make it even tighter. Okay, leave it out of the fridge, leave it in a cool, dark place and let it ferment for a couple of days. In the winter time, if you've got a really cold kitchen, it might need 3 days. You will see the cucumbers changing in colour from a vibrant green to a muggier green. You'll also see the garlic change colour. The garlic might have a little bit of green tinge to it. It looks like it's mouldy, but it's actually not. It's absolutely fine. So don't panic when you see your garlic changing colour, because it's absolutely fine. I'm just going to go to some questions. Do you cool boiling water? Yes, June, you always cool your boiling water. It's really important to let your boiling water cool, and it's also important to make sure that the liquid you pour on top of your pickles is cool. A lot of recipes say pour the boiling brine, the hot brine over your pickles, and it really, I don't think it doesn't work as well. Okay, what I wanted to show you were my cucumbers, which I've made. So the beautiful thing about when you go traveling, antique stores are where you find the most beautiful jars. Look at this jar. This is actually a family heirloom. It's a square shape. It's got a beautiful cork on the top. It's a big jar, so you can put a lot of cucumbers in here. Remember, never go in with dirty hands. And I want to show you here, this is a traditional gherkin. Can you see the bumps on the skin of that cucumber? That's a traditional gherkin. This has been in my fridge for months. I made this for, this batch was, I think, Pesach. So this has been in here for a while. We're going to take a little cut. Listen to this crunch. So good, so good. So the beauty of this, you can see there are some pieces of carrot floating in here because as the cucumbers have sort of been pickled, they shrink up. Sorry. Now, I'm a real waste not, want not anything. I reuse my brine for a couple of different reasons. You know, it's all the fashion at the moment that all the tennis players are drinking pickle juice because it stops you from getting cramps. It's the 21st century Gatorade drink. But, you know, for many cultures, people have been drinking pickle juice for centuries. If you've ever been to Turkey, in Istanbul, on the fisherman's, when you're by the bridge on the European side in Istanbul, there's a very famous fish burger that everyone raves about. So a few years ago I was there. The burger was just incredible. A piece of baby barramundi in an old-fashioned crusty white bread, squeeze of lemon juice, and there's a pickle man there with his trolley. And this pickle man is selling cups of pickle juice. And you drink his pickle juice and then you eat the fish burger. Quite often when I'm entertaining, I will take this pickle juice and I will serve it in a shot glass. And basically what it's doing is it's stimulating your palate because it's salty, it's a little bit sweet, and it really is just getting your digestion ready for a delicious meal. Lebanese cucumbers, yes, Natalie, they are fine to use. Denise says, must you cool the water when pickling the carrots and the daikon? Yes, I would, otherwise you're going to cook them and they won't be as crunchy, Denise. Renee says, I missed the caster sugar measurement for the daikon and the carrots. It was a quarter of a cup of sugar. All the recipes are online on my website, miacucina.com.au. They're also on the danira.org.au website. You can also reach out to me at any time. What are your other favourite things to pickle? Very nice question. So, you know, in my family, it's all about drinkies at 5 o'clock and what are we going to have with our whiskey sour? And it's been for generations. I remember growing up with grandparents and great-grandparents and everyone sitting down to a pre-dinner drink. And there's something that's been an heirloom recipe in our home is pickled vegetables. I'm just going to show you our pickled vegetables. Again, it's another heirloom jar. This is a beautiful sort of square jar with a plastic lid. And inside you can see the remains of our pickled vegetables. So this is also a really fun thing to make. And, you know, you can't make mistakes when you are pickling, so long as you follow the basic rules. It's a great thing for the kids. If you want your kids to eat things that they don't normally eat, if they join you in the kitchen and they make it themselves, they're more likely to eat whatever they have cooked. Can you use the brine when it's finished? Absolutely, Nessie. I was just saying before, I will reuse my brine. If I know that no one has put their dirty little paws into my pickling jar and that it is lovely and clean, I will reuse that brine. So I will get some more pickled cucumbers, put them into a smaller jar, and I will pour this brine over the pickles. And again, I leave it out of the fridge for a couple of days and then put it into the fridge. So reusing that brine is, it really is, you know, it's easy. It is easy. You've got to make sure that you can't see any film growing on the top of the brine. And like my mum was just saying, her grandfather, my great-grandfather, used to put slices of bread on top of the brine. So that may have absorbed anything that was in the brine. Which salt did you recommend? If not rock salt, kosher salt. Yes, salts are saltier than others. Jeanette, that's why you just need to make sure you try them as you add them. So, you know, you can use the molten cooking salt. That's a salt that is great. It really, any salt, make sure that it's not the common table salt. That's important. So the pickled vegetables, getting back to them, in a big bowl, they're raw vegetables. So you break up the heads of the cauliflower. You can put beans, cut up beans, sort of bite-sized pieces, capsicum, onions. My favourite is ginger. Freshly sliced, quite thick ginger is absolutely delicious. The onion I put, we call them flowerets of the onion. So you peel the onion. Remember to keep the top in place. You cut them like the Chinese in wedges and you put that into the mix. And again, you mix all the vegetables together, pack them tightly into a jar. You pour the cooled brine over the vegetables. You can use either the recipe from the pickled cucumbers. You can even use the Vietnamese one, which is slightly sweeter. Don't be afraid. You can mix up your vinegars. You don't have to use rice wine vinegar. You can use white vinegar. You can use apple cider vinegar. You know, you really can mix it up. Just make sure you taste your brine and make sure it's cooled before you pour it over your vegetables. Because the pickled vegetables are cut up and they're smaller, they don't need as long as the pickled cucumbers out of the fridge. So you could leave them there out for a day or so, especially if it's hot, and then put the lid on and put them into the fridge. And they will last months and months, so long as every time you go into them, you use clean equipment. Do you ever slice the cucumbers, Lily? Great question. So yes, you know how it is the fashion, or the groovy markets have these sliced cucumbers, like the bread and butter cucumbers that you can buy in the supermarket? Yes, you can do that, and cut them not too thin, cut them a little bit thicker. And so for one Lebanese cucumber, I would cut it perhaps into 3, 4 if it was a big cucumber, and place all of those slices into the jar. You can cut them, crinkle cut them into rings and make bread and butter cucumbers, bread and butter pickles. That recipe would need to be a little bit sweeter. And again, they wouldn't need to be out of the fridge as long as if it was a whole cucumber. How do you slice the zucchinis? The zucchinis I just slice on the angle, not too thin, and mix it through. My kids, my last batch, I put garlic in, and my kids didn't like the garlic, so I love the garlic personally. I do want to show you. So here is that's the pickled cauliflower. It is absolutely delicious with a whiskey o'clock. So good. So delicious. Okay, so some more questions. Would cutes be suitable too? Yeah, I've put cucumbers in here too. That's absolutely fabulous. And, oh, thanks, Katrina. Thanks for your lovely message. So, so let me just recap. All the recipes are online on dunera.org.au, and they're also on my website. And if you want to know what's happening in Sydney, anything to do with food, you should be following me at Mia Cucina _ that's on Instagram, or Mia Cucina Food Tours on Facebook. You always can ask for recipes at any time or recommendations. I've just put together a fabulous food map, a Google food map of the south coast of New South Wales. So if you're looking to go for a road trip and you want to know where to eat or where the best cheese shops are, all of that, I've put together an interactive map. So you jump into your car, plug in your phone, and up will pop 70 destinations, from cheese shops to the best cafes and restaurants and bakeries and confectionery stores. So check out that at miacucina.com.au. Mel, I thought the meeting was 11 o'clock. Yeah, unfortunately, Mel, the time did change just at the end there. So you will be able to watch this in a couple of minutes. It will go live. You can watch it again on the Dunera website. So I do apologise because there was a little mix up there with the times. The website is miacucina.com.au, and I'm just going to type this on here so you can see it here. It's in your chat room. So this was our first workshop on the Dunera Food channel. What I would really love to hear today is what other workshops you're interested in seeing. Do you have problems with your meringue and pavlova? Are you interested in scone baking, or if it's a sponge, or whatever workshop that you really would be interested in? We are looking for suggestions and your ideas. What are the best food pairing for pickles? The best food pairings, pastrami and salted meats are really natural hand in hand. You know, you can go to New York and have pastrami on toasted rye with pickles. Pickles are everywhere. Salty goes with salty, which is really very beautiful. Cheese and pickles and tomatoes work really well together. Pickles is a strong flavoured, salty, sweet experience. So it's not that you wouldn't eat a piece of light white fish. It's with a heartier meat, a fattier meat. A jam making workshop. Thank you, Lisa. That's a great one. Yes, homemade jam is an absolute pleasure. It's so easy. And I cut a lot of corners to make wonderful, because I am sugar-free. When the fruit is in season, we will make some really lovely jam. Curds, dairy-free, minus egg yolks from Ruth. Yep, that's a great one, Ruth. Thank you. We will put that into action. Flour pickled the same way as the carrot. Flour pickled. Denise, I'm not sure what you mean, but I'll have a look at that. Place jar on the side. Okay, fruit preserving. Yes, that's a great one, fruit preserving. And a lot of people don't understand their technique, whether you're stewing fruit, the difference between poaching and stewing. And that has all to do with the proportion of sugar to water. So that's another great workshop, which I think we're going to look at. Anyway, you can email us at danira.org.au at any time. Send us a message and we will take on your feedback, which will be great. Some cauliflower recipes from Denise. Yep, Denise, we can look into that. What I did want to let you know was what is coming up with Danira in the next week or so. This Thursday, Lisa, our co-host here on the Food Channel, is baking babka with Bet. We have the gorgeous Bette Midler who is singing, and Lisa is teaching her how to make a babka. So go on to danira.org.au. That will be a fun morning. That's happening on Thursday, and then that will be recorded and you can watch that anytime. The following Monday, Lisa's cooking with salmon, and the following Thursday, the 25th, I'm showing you a virtual food tour of our Vietnamese community in Cabramatta. Sorry about that, Ruth. I know the changing times, and Lisa will be making a salmon crumble. Wanted to know if the pickled cauliflower is the same as the carrot. That's exactly right, Denise. Yes, the pickled cauliflower is exactly the same with the carrot. So there's a lot of different things going on the Danira website. We've got Ilan Kidron from the Potbellies. He does a fabulous event every Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. And there's a lot of different shows on. So really it's very worthwhile jumping onto the website and checking that out. So what I did want to say was send us through any of your requests. Don't forget pickled vegetables. Really, you can be using any vegetables in your pickled vegetables, making sure they're not starchy vegetables. So it's not potato, it's not kumara, but it is all your other vegetables, the carrots, the onions, the cucumbers, the zucchinis, the cauliflower, the beans, the chilies. Remember with your pickled vegetables, just to run through again for Ruth and whoever else has come in late, but you can re-watch this on the danira.org.au website. Make sure your jars are sterilised. That's the most important thing. That your cucumbers have been hand-picked so they're fairly straight and not curling. Make sure you cool your brine down before you add it to your cucumbers. A lot of recipes will tell you to add it to the hot brine to the pickles. Leave it out of the fridge for a couple of days and make sure that as they start popping out of the brine, to add another cucumber or some carrot, add it, push them in to push it down under the brine. Do you use the same method as the pickled cucumbers? Yes, we did that. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening, Vancouver from Connecticut. Thank you guys for joining us. Any questions, please leave them here in the chat. Make sure you're following me on Instagram, Mia Cucina _ and on Facebook, Mia Cucina Food Tours. And check out the Danira website and we'll see you next time. Thanks guys. Thanks for coming. Bye. How do you dry the sterilised jar? Anna, you just let it dry. If the jar's really hot, just let the jar dry on its own. You don't put a tea towel in there. Let the heat of the jar just dried on its own. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks for all your lovely feedback. Any comments would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, Jennifer, for joining us. Thanks, guys. See you soon.